Hello everyone, this is Paul, and welcome to another Common Touch of Fantasy review. Today we are reviewing the Elric Saga, Part 1 by Michael Moorcock. I gave this book a 3 out of 5. It was a fine book. It wasn't outstanding, but I did like it, but it wasn't anything super special. For plot, I gave it a 3. For characters, I gave it a 3. For setting and world building, I gave it a 3. Writing style, a 3. And heart and mind aspect was also a 3. So a total score of 15. The type of story this is, it's a darker anti-hero fantasy. So this is part 1 of the Elric Saga. Within this, there are 3 different stories. The first one is Elric of Melnibone, the Sailor on the Seas of Fate, and the Weird of the White Wolf. Okay guys, so a short summary of Elric of Melnibone and the Elric Saga in general. Elric of Melnibone is the emperor of a race of people that are feared throughout the entire world. This race uses a lot of dragons, it uses a lot of sorcery, and it can even summon demons and gods to their aid. Elric is very different than the rest of his race. He is more conscientious, and he's more curious about the outside world. Melnibone is on a downward decline, and his cousin, Elric's cousin, Yurkun, wants to usurp Elric and bring back the brutality that Melnibone is usually known for. Elric has failing health. He's very weak, and he has to take a lot of potions and different spices and things of that nature to give him strength. Yurkun was able to take advantage of this and successfully usurp Elric. And also, Elric is in love with a woman called Samuel, and she believes Elric has died and that Yurkun has killed him. Elric is now on a mission of revenge against his cousin that has taken his throne from him. With the assistance of a dark sword named Stormbringer, a sword that has its own personality and its own desires, and thirst for the souls of his victims, he must use that sword to try to stop Yurkun. Elric also uses Stormbringer to sustain his own strength. Alright, so the later stories of Elric are all about his travels. He believes that the world knows information about how to survive, and he wants to get the information from these younger kingdoms and bring it back to Melnibone to try to bring Melnibone into the present as far as relationships between the other young kingdoms in the world. Elric soon finds out through his journeys that his inherent personality of being evil is something that is going to be extremely hard for him to overcome, especially with his sword Stormbringer. He has a very hard time walking the line between good and evil. His stories are all ones of redemption, revenge, dealing with his weaknesses, his guilt, and his inability to conquer the darkness within his own heart. Alright, so why should you guys read this book? First off, Michael Moorcock is one of the most influential fantasy writers when it comes to this anti-hero idea of Elric. He's one of the first people to say, hey, I don't want to do what Tolkien did, the tropes that Tolkien did, I'm not feeling those, I'm going to try something new, I'm going to create this anti-hero that is very confused and doesn't know if he's good or bad or really what he wants to do. He's always fighting a battle within himself and who he is. He's an incredibly flawed character. You know, at times it might seem like Elric is actually contradictory of what he did in the past. One moment he wants to help people, but then at the next moment he has like this bloodthirsty rage. It's an interesting dichotomy because the reader expects Elric to act a certain way, and it's almost like his character is very indecisive. And it can be a little bit frustrating for the reader at times. And it's not Michael Moorcock's fault. It's Elric the character's fault. It's just how he is and how he goes about doing things. Once the reader understands that it is Elric that's making the randomness happen in these stories, it's much easier to read. And also, it kind of becomes like a study in the duality of man, their good and evil sides, and which one will prevail. It's very interesting. You know, for an older book, some of it written as early as 1961, and other parts written in the 70s, is very similar to some of the works that are being written today. Two of the books that I feel are very similar to Elric that are being written today, and are inspired by Elric, are R.A. Salvatore's Ritz series and Mark Lawrence's The Broken Empire trilogy. Both series have like anti-hero type characters in them, and they're very similar to Elric. You know, Moorcock's writing style is ahead of its time. It is really easy and really crisp to read. Moorcock could have easily written this series today, and it would appeal to many readers. But he wrote it 40 years ago, which is a testament to Moorcock's imagination and his creativity. And the last reason why you should read Elric is because the action is fantastic. Even though it's not a violent book per se, Moorcock doesn't hold back at all. You know, within the first few pages, there's a guy being tortured for being a slave, and he's getting body parts cut off. And right then I realized, oh, this isn't your normal 1970s campy fantasy book. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is something way different. You know, Stormbringer, which is one of the most amazing swords in all of fantasy literature. The sword's just cool. You know, it has no problems taking off people's heads and like cutting people in two. And Moorcock doesn't shy away from describing that. You know, Elric is able to conjure like gods, conjure demons, conjure beasts, elementals to help them fight, and it's really cool. I really enjoy it. Even though it might seem like it's kind of overpowered for him to be able to do that, there's always strings attached to calling on the help of these different beasts and gods. So why might you not like this book? Okay. Even though the Elric Saga was way ahead of its time, the negativity is that it was published in its time in the format that it was published. The saga is 3 different books included in this first part of the saga. Each one of these books has 3 different parts within that book. And this is the official internal chronology, but this was put together in 1977. The thing of it is, all these different parts of this book was written between 1961 and 1977. And a lot of them were novellas and short stories that were published in different magazines and anthologies. So, what I'm trying to say here is, Moorcock wrote the Elric books and the Elric novellas not in a sequential order, and you can really tell while reading it that it wasn't written that way. It wasn't until afterwards that it was put together in a sequence that made the most sense. Unfortunately, because of that, there just really isn't much of a flow at all from book to book. You know, some of the stories are great unto themselves, while others are extremely confusing. And some of it really only makes sense after Moorcock has written more books in this series and in other series. Because of that, it's very hard to get lost while reading this book, because the novellas within the books are relatively short. So as soon as you start to get into it and you're feeling a groove, it switches, and then you just lose any flow or any momentum you had while reading. And then sometimes the story itself isn't as strong as previous stories. However, I recommend Michael Moorcock's writing in the Elric Saga series. I feel that Moorcock's body of work is best looked together as a part of a whole. You know, I only read this first part of the Elric Saga, and it was written well enough that I believe that it's in my interest to keep reading the Elric Saga and his other books, especially the Eternal Champion sequence. You know, if you want to read something that has influenced many contemporary writers today, I would recommend the Elric Saga Part 1. If I would have known what I've known now when reading this, I would not have read it all the way straight through. I probably would have read it in chunks so that it could feel more novella-ish or more short story-ish. And I was trying to read it like a novel when it should be read like a little bit at a time. Now that I do know what to expect, I plan to continue with the series. Once again, I gave it a 3 out of 5. Okay, I realize this review is a little bit longer than my previous reviews, but I wanted to really explain what's going on with the Michael Moorcock books. It's extremely confusing to me. I did a lot of research about the order and the chronology and where to start, where the best place to start is, and I decided on this. Anyway, this has been a review of the Elric Saga Part 1 by Michael Moorcock. I am currently reading Book 2 in the Amber Chronicles and the Guns of Avalon, and so far I'm enjoying it more than I did 9 Princes of Amber, so I hope it stays good. Okay, I will talk to you guys next time. Please comment, please like, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.